Welcome to Cordkillers. The world of entertainment is turned upside down, and we are just trying to find out how to watch what we want, where we want, whenever we want. I'm Tom Merritt. Brian Brushwood, where's the good stuff?
Oh my gosh, the good stuff is in that narrative hook, Tom. It occurs to me that a good quest sounds very specific, but is also never achievable. We'll always, like Zeno's arrow, be halfway towards our goal of watching what we want, when we want, on whatever device we please. Guess what? That's a good narrative hook that has nothing to do with the monomyth.
I want nothing to do with this, Brian. I'm just a simple farmer. I can't host this show.
Of course you can. I've died, Tom. The show is in peril.
It's an inevitable thing that I must help Brian now. I will answer the call, as a matter of fact, in our supply run. Now, some of the more astute of you may have noticed that we were referencing the hero's journey there in our open. Yeah, I know. Didn't get past
pretty clever.
Yeah. There is an article on Aeon.co. It's kind of a thinking person's journal, aeon.co, if you want to check it out, called Our Narrative Prison. The three-act hero's journey has long been the most prominent kind of story. But what other tales are there to tell? And then it just kind of goes through the hero's journey. Brian, you're really good at summing up the hero's journey. For anybody who's like, I actually don't know what the hero's journey is. How do you explain it?
It's interesting. First of all, I should point out that my entire career, I've always been more of a transactional Vulcan. I've always been like, just tell the truth, do the thing or whatever. But the more I pay attention as I turn 50 and so on, the more I realize humans are narrative driven creatures. And there seem to be certain ways that we like our stories to be, and we get uncomfortable if they're not. Just like there are certain ways, for example, at a very core level, we like symmetrical faces. That is very pleasing because those are the mates that are most likely to be healthy for us to pair with for our lives. Likewise, when it comes to our story, a lot of things make sense when you know about Dunbar's number. Did I already share this bit with you, Tom? Did we already go through this one?
The Dunbar's number thing.
Yeah.
I thought we're now taking a journey because I thought you were going to summarize the hero's journey. And now
I'm going to get there. I'm going to get there.
Okay.
Actually, you know what? I won't. I'm going to save it. Nope. Well, now I'm in a pickle. Okay.
I know what Dunbar's number is. I'm not sure where we're going with it. That's all I'm trying to say.
As short as I can. Dunbar's number basically says human brains, all things being equal, were built for tribes of 150 people. And when you think of humans as a multicellular organism, a lot of things make sense that doesn't otherwise make sense. Like a single person, why would you choose to not be sexually compatible with everyone? You know, but if you have a 150 multicellular unit, you'd probably want to carve off 20% to be sexually flexible or whatever. You want 10% to be headstrong and irrational and dangerous and all those things. You also want a couple of shamans to tell stories to keep the rest of the tribe apprised. And you probably want the entire tribe to want a particular type of story. And Joseph Campbell began to notice that all of the greatest stories seem to share, kind of like we all seem to like symmetrical faces, we all seem to like one type of what he called the monomyth. And the protagonist, the main character, who's always a thinly veiled, easy to project yourself onto character, is in a place of comfort in a normal world, and he has vague aspirations of going somewhere or doing something, but he has a lot of very good reasons to stay home. Just another season, Luke Skywalker. And then at some point, the decision is made for him. There's an inciting incident, at which point the protagonist has to leave the normal world and go to this underworld, a strange world where maybe there's magic or the Force or you unplug from the Matrix. But basically, the rules are strange and different. And eventually, that character goes on a series of trials. Oftentimes, a company discovers a wizard or whatever. And then there's some moment when all hope is lost. Kung Fu Panda is about to finally die at the hands of the cheetah. Neo is about to die at the hands of Agent Smith. And that's when the core question of the monomyth is the protagonist asks, who am I? A bunch of stuff happens. He finds out who he is, and usually there's a terrible price. And at that point, he reemerges to the normal world, transformed, master of both domains. He has the fourth. He is a Jedi Knight. He is Neo. He is these things. So then that's the circular nature of stuff. And if you're Dan Harmon, you can see that structure all the way down to single sentences. You want something, because the sentence gets complicated and comes back, but now you understand the point that was being made, et cetera, et cetera. So,
and by the way, it's always best described with kind of a fantasy sci-fi matrixy kind of approach, but it applies to romantic comedies. Like, it doesn't have to be a genre. It applies to basically every story you've ever seen.
Yeah, and what's fun, a fun game is to discover it where it's been under your nose the entire time. Like, for example, it wasn't until Stephen Pressfield pointed out in one of his books that in Fight Club, the narrator refuses the call to move into the Paper Street house, I believe like 13 times. And finally, Tyler Durden says, just ask, man. It's like 3 pitchers of beer and you still can't ask. Ask what? Just ask. You want to come stay with me? Would that be a problem? Would it be a problem for you to ask? And then eventually he moves into the Paper Street house and enters another world, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. So Eliane Glaser, who's a writer and radio producer, has written a few books on elitism, a progressive defense, and motherhood, feminism's unfinished business, has this article on Aeon about our narrative prison, the hero's journey. Really thought-provoking, really well written, talks about, the idea of there being other ways of telling a story and how we tend to not be able to break out of this, that almost, especially in film, all stories follow the hero's journey in some sense or other, and whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, and whether it would be better for us to try to tell other kinds of stories. I found it very thought-provoking. I didn't necessarily agree with everything that was asserted in the essay, but I don't think that's the point. The point was to kind of poke and prod, and I don't feel like she actually ended up coming up with a way to break out of the narrative prison. I don't think she ended up being okay with it either. She's still saying, like, it can infantilize us. It can maybe be used as an opiate of the masses to make us comfortable with our oppression and all of that. But she didn't seem to end up at an alternative. What did you think of this?
Yeah. So, I vacillated back and forth between thinking it was profound and trite. The trite version would be, oh no, it turns out we all like pleasant things and we don't like unpleasant things. What a prison we're trapped in, right?
Sure.
But I did like very much the supposition of, as the science of understanding what humans seems to like becomes more and more precise. And let's take, for example, in our lifetime, Tom, Hollywood blockbusters went from an inefficient market, like, say, real estate is, to a very, very efficient market, like, let's say, the stock market is. A level of storytelling precision where every frame you could just exchange dollars into staff who examine everything from the lighting to the narration to using computers to tweak whether or not somebody blinks at the right moment or whatever, and then it can be test focused and focus tested in groups and become so perfectly polished that you could turn to your investors and say, that was $400 million well invested. We're all going to get even richer. That is remarkable that happened in our lifetime. And it does have kind of terrifying implications to think, if we've weaponized storytelling, if we've cracked storytelling to that level, what does that mean implied for propaganda? Or what does that mean in terms of, will we ever evolve out of it? And I think these are interesting. I don't share the low-grade panicked vibe I got from this piece, but I do think there are interesting implications to it.
Yeah, one of the things I liked about the way she wrote this, it wasn't like, oh no, I've discovered something brand new. No one ever realized this. It was very much rooted in like, yes, early 20th century literary modernism was dealing with this. Ursula K. Le Guin railed against it. This is a long tradition of wondering, like, is this monomyth bad for us? And many people like Le Guin thought it was and said, no, you need to jolt people out. And the monomyth and the story structure tends to lull them into comfort. And you need to wake them up to what's really happening, which is the eternal cry of the revolutionary throughout time. If someone believes things are not going well, you need to wake people up to the fact that they're not going well. So none of this is new. And I like that she didn't try to pretend like it was new, but sort of tie it into like, and where are we now? Post-COVID-19, streaming, the boom in television. And I think she makes, like you said, some really good points about this kind of story structure can be weaponized. And I wonder to what effect it can be used to lull us into thinking things are good. But that's not necessarily an issue with the story structure. It's just that story structure works. It's more, how are people using it? And then one thing I would have liked to see her address is, could you use the monomyth hero's journey story structure against those forces that you don't agree with? Could you weaponize it yourself as a revolutionary?
So here's a fun paradox that is very niche. It's from my world, but I think everyone will crock it. Magicians in general, let's for sake of discussion say a lot of magicians didn't like Brian Brushwood teaching magic on the internet because they feared that if everyone knew how the tricks were done, nobody would want to see magic, right? Nobody would want to see their magic show. Some magicians could hold that thought in their mind and yet also hold the thought in their mind that someday they hope to save up thousands of dollars to hop on a plane to go to the other side of the planet to see FISM, F-I-S-M, the Olympics of magic, essentially. And so at FISM, there are thousands and thousands of magicians who, spoiler alert, know how all the tricks are done, who are paying top dollar for the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to watch another magician try to fool them. And then they get fooled. So, and for some reason, a big chunk of magicians couldn't see the conflicting nature of that. So likewise, I think that really what this article is doing is wrestling with the exact same thing, which is, I do think there's a level of sophistication, although there could be a bias since we are old enough to have seen a generation's worth of storytelling styles come and go. We're now around to see kind of a second lap of a certain type of narrative come back. And so, but in general, the market kind of has seen a lot of one type of story lately. And I do think that this article is an excellent indicator that there's a level of sophistication in even the popcorn audiences where I suspect there will be a pushback against by the numbers blockbusters, and we want a little bit of spice to our stories. You need to be, if you are going to end up revealing yourself to be the monomyth the whole time, you better do a pretty good job of hiding it and make it a genuine surprise when we find out, which to me, this is another version of the same paradox, the FISM paradox.
Yeah, I think what I found interesting, if I'm remembering right, she talks about like, there are some movies that are praised as being innovative and different, but really all they're doing is doing a more surprising rejection of the call, a unexpected, unusual situation. Like it still fits the pattern. One thing I have actually made a sort of amateur game of is trying to identify other ways of telling a story that aren't hero's journey, because the hero's journey definitely arises out of European culture. There is no argument that it works and that it appeals worldwide, but it definitely comes out of that kind of storytelling. And there are other types of storytelling out there. I am a fan of a lot of the Chinese wuxia and chancha stories that are very much like, the world of the gods and demons and angels and all of that. They do not follow the hero's journey. But I also know that those are some of the hardest ones to recommend to people because they are different than what you're expecting. And even if it's subconscious, right? It's one thing if in fact, it might even be easier to appreciate them if like, oh, I'm used to the hero's journey and this isn't it. Okay, great. But if you don't even know what the hero's journey is, but subconsciously that's what you expect, it's actually disappointing because you're like, well, this isn't the kind of story I'm used to. And so I think it's boring or I think it's off track or whatever. So I almost feel like the hero's journey is a self-fulfilling prophecy, especially because it's worldwide, that it has trained the audience to expect that to be the kind of story because it's a very good kind of story that everybody enjoys.
Yeah, I don't know if we discussed it on this program, but I did Andrew Heaton's podcast, Alienating the Audience, and we talked about time loop stories, and we talked about how there tends to be in the Campbellian, hero's journey, it's almost a very libertarian story. There's a person who goes on a journey, who goes through adversity, who has a climactic moment and sticks the landing, gets the touchdown, picks up the girl, whatever. Whereas time loops are interesting because, there's other types of stories. For example, A Canticle for Leibowitz is a series of short stories that kind of, depending on how you squint, can play as a fatalistic, everything is a circle, what's the point? Humans are just going to nuke themselves again and again. After they rebuild, they're going to go to war again. What's old is new. But even then, let's say you do a loop, you do enough loops and kind of the world becomes a protagonist that you see evolving over time. It took an hour to get to the point over there, so I don't expect it to land here.
Yeah, of course. One alternative that probably is fairly familiar and maybe easier for people to adapt to are the anime story structures, which some of them, especially more recent ones, will follow her hero's journey, but often they'll follow something called Kishu Tenketsu, which is similar, but it doesn't have a central conflict. So if you've ever watched an anime and then thought back, like, wait, what was the conflict? And you couldn't think of it, you might have been watching one that followed this form where you kind of introduce a world and its characters. Then you spend a lot of time just developing the characters before you give them a twist. And the conclusion is reconciling the twist with the initial world that you set up. And that's where your tension comes from. It doesn't come from conflict with the characters. And if you think about some anime, that is often the situation that you're dealing with. It's not if there is conflict, it's not central to the story.
Do you remember the name? Was it Look Back? Was that the anime that my daughter got me to watch? Let me see if I wrote it down.
That's not sounding right to me. But I wouldn't bet everything that's not it. But
okay, well, I'll see if I can find it. But in that case, it was just the story of two friends, and it was there's sort of like, without getting in the weeds, there's kind of two ways of the friendship being that are like universes next door. One is tragic and sad, and the other one is not. And there is no conflict. Like at the end, like, well, which is true? Both? Neither? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just a way of being. And it ends up to my brain. There's a little synesthesia kind of talk. It just tasted like a vibe. Like let me just hear that note. Like, oh, there's no song. It's just neat chord, right? And I'm like, yeah, that is a neat chord. The end.
Yeah. The Murakami book 1Q84 felt like that to me. Yes. Much to my frustration. And I remember you and I discussing it.
Yeah. Where I was like, what is happening, Tom? And you're like, oh, some books from the other side of the planet be like that, Brian. And I was like, oh, okay.
It's like I think I tried to explain it to some people. I can't remember if you were one of them. It's like a bath. Instead of looking for the plot, just soak in the world. Like it is mostly world, and it follows that structure. There's also Scandinavian narrative, which is also European, but Scandinavian narrative is what Thor and all the sagas are, where you just have a bunch of characters and occasionally they cross paths, and that's the fun part of the story. And then they diverge and go off on their own way. And then they cross paths again, and when they cross paths, things happen, but there's not necessarily a journey that they're on, so to speak.
Yeah. What I wonder if this, and watching the emergence of LLMs really has me kind of at a philosophical wit's end. I haven't been able to prove to myself that all humans aren't just predictive LLMs. Like we're babies, we're fed a bunch of things that happens. And the one thing we love more than anything in the world is seeing two ingredients, predicting how it's going to go, and not being 100% right because then we're bored, not being 100% wrong because then it makes no sense, but being almost right, or as laymen call it, surprised. And there's, as I sit with that, even like as you described that type of story, like, well, I know what a Thor is, and I know what a Hela is. What if a Hela and a Thor were in this place? And then instantly my brain would make a predictive model of it. And then I get to soak in the bath and decide, was I right? How close was I? Was I almost right?
Yeah. There is a little bit of something, and I bet there's a word for it I don't know, and most likely it's German, where whatever the modern technology that's cutting edge is, we model our brains after it, right? Like people are like, oh, the human brain is like a machine in Newtonian times, or oh no, the human brain is like a computer, and most recently, and now it's like, oh no, the human brain is like an LLM. And the fact is, all of those are correct, right? There are mechanical aspects to our brain, there are process. And the reason they're correct is because we created all those things.
Exactly.
So we're taking elements of ourselves and we're like, oh, this kind of is like what we do. And it's never all of what we are, but it's always a part. And I think every time it's a little bigger part.
Boy, you're so right. You could go all the way back to the Stone Age where it's like, rock is wrong. Rock should be like her. Rock is like her. Her is like rock. We all are like rock.
What analogy is born? I thought this was a really thought-provoking essay, and I'm glad we brought it here because I think not only does it give us a chance to talk about the hero's journey and how pervasive it is, but I was glad that she was asking questions I don't hear people ask all the time when they talk about this stuff.
So my response, I don't know if you remember, Tom, the moment you sent the story over, I asked, have you seen Friendship yet? And Friendship, the movie with Paul Rudd and Tim Robinson. I
really, 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 really wanted to watch it this weekend, and I just couldn't find the time needed to drive, park, sit, watch, and come home. Like it just... I'm not quite there yet, but I'm close.
This movie, like during the movie, it was tantric. I kept almost seeing the loop closed to map onto Campbellian monomyth stuff. But at some point, about 2/3 of the way through, I realized, oh, this is not an accident. This is not incompetent storytelling. This is, instead of a simple pop song, I'm listening to complicated jazz.
Yeah.
And I'm supposed to be left feeling a bit unfulfilled and itchy and twitchy, and to be honest, it's working because now I want to go back and see it again, paying attention to maybe a fourth or fifth most important character but pretend they are the protagonist of it.
Yeah, and maybe loosening up that lens a little to see if you can find some other threads in there. That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, folks, I'm just a simple farmer, and I'll never have anyone support me on Patreon, and so I'm just not going to do podcasts anymore.
What would the inciting incident be? The electric bill just showed up, Tom. You have no choice.
No, not this strange world of people-supported podcasts, it can't be done. Only big companies with advertising can support podcasts, Brian.
Oh, I'm sorry. I've arrived just in time. It's me, elder statesman, independent podcastman. Come along. There's no time to argue. We have to go to the mysterious world of patreon.com/Cordkillers. That's right, Cordkillers, where you can keep us loud, live, and independent. Get early access to the full experience, exclusive access to its spoiler in time as part of After Talk, and most importantly, the sweet, sweet, smug satisfaction of knowing that you are literally bending reality. I want you to wrap your mind around this, all you old timers. There was a reality where, much like used to be a little boy named Neo. He was plugged into the Matrix, had to do what the Matrix told him to do, harness all of his creative energies for the Matrix. And then he broke out of the Matrix. And then he died because nobody supported him and there was no life-sustaining money.
Yeah.
That's a different timeline. We live in the timeline where you guys, it is astonishing to me that here we both sit, Tom, in rooms where we're both pretty sure the other person exists. And the one thing both of us know is that we talk and think, and that somewhere in this slow motion, wonderful telepathy, our thoughts arrive all over the planet. If that's not the best magic trick you can think of, I don't know what is. And it's all made possible thanks to our lovable, incredible patrons. I still don't, it's been over a decade. Patreon.com/Cordkillers.
Yeah, that's the important part. All right, then let's move on to the search party. Okay, good. Listen, Brian, I've come a long way in the past 2 minutes. And if I've learned anything, it's that Squid Game Season 3 is returning June 27th, and there's a trailer for it. Did you watch the trailer?
I did. That's why we started a little bit late. I know that the Tudum Festival is no joke. It's Tudum. trying to horn in on that sweet Avengers Doom action. Tudum.
By the way, I was coming out of a concert this weekend, and Tudum was happening across the street at the Forum, and there was a crazy amount of like trucks with things set up for people to walk in and do, and the lights of the Forum were all multicolored for Netflix. It was a huge
So you do realize that somewhere in Netflix is somebody with the authority to write a check large enough to cause Disney to not even release Avengers, whatever, the Doomsday in theaters, and instead just give it to Netflix. And it'll be very expensive, but Netflix could theoretically just run it right there on a special licensing deal. So quite literally, somebody at Netflix is considering to doom or not to doom.
That was a long way to a silent, angry pun.
Sorry, I'm glad it got a chuckle.
It all in service of us talking about our first Netflix to doom item, which is Squid Game Season 3.
Yeah, it looks real pretty, Tom.
It looks real pretty. Also spoilery. I mean, the trailer shows you one of the main moments I was looking forward to when those two meet. Although I guess they kind of don't see them meet. It's just intercut. So maybe that's not actually how they meet. I don't know.
And you know what? Actually, that's interesting because it's certainly implied that the two are talking to each other. But now that you say that, that's the kind of tricky thing that you
ISO
would
shot,
do.
ISO shot. So
Interesting.
Anyway, I'm looking forward to it. There's also a new trailer out for Downton Abbey, the grand finale. This will be the end of the Downton Abbey franchise until someone gives money to somebody else to spin it off someday. But they say this is the end of their story. It'll be set in 1930. That one coming to theaters September 12th. And we got a teaser for Wake Up, Dead Man, a Knives Out mystery. That one also coming to Netflix December 12th. And this was really a teaser. We just saw, what's the character's name? What's
James Bond.
No, it's not James Bond. It is James. Not in this one.
Southern James Bond. Yeah.
Southern mystery guy is his name. We just see him doing a little monologue.
Yeah. Is it just me, Tom? And maybe we've already covered this story, and that's where the idea came from. But is it in the rules that a Knives Out mystery can take place in a different time? Because this looked.
Benoit Blanc, I looked it up, has long hair, and perhaps is styled differently than we are used to. Could he be in the past? Is that what you're thinking?
That's what I would like to play with the idea of. This is just a way of, it's like a bath to soak in, Tom.
They're definitely implying that there was a resurrection or some miracle performed, and that he realizes that was a trick and it was just murder. But man, if they said it in like 1800s New Orleans, that plot still works.
Yeah, I got some kind of game is happening vibes, but I don't know if I'm projecting.
Netflix also showed the first 6 minutes of season 2 of Wednesday, which the first 6 minutes did not feature this, but they did confirm that Lady Gaga will show up as a character in this season of Wednesday. Part 1 of Wednesday comes on August 6th, and part 2 comes on September 3rd. I can't remember if you even watched the first season of Wednesday or not.
I think I watched maybe the first few minutes, and I felt like I had a strong handle on that flavor, and I found some other flavors to watch. I'm rooting for Lady Gaga. I hope she gets a cinematic win.
Yes, Stephanie Germanotta, go get them. I am a huge fan of Jenna Ortega's portrayal of Wednesday. I just was totally charmed and ended up watching the entire season 1 of Wednesday based mostly on her performance. And the first 6 minutes is really just her doing that shtick again. And I'm like, this is great. I love it. So I'm kind of in. We also got a teaser for Stranger Things 5th and final season, which will actually be split into 3 parts. Talked about all the release strategies. We never talked about a 3-part release for a season. Volume 1 debuting November 26th, right around Thanksgiving. Volume 2, December 25th, what many people call Christmas. And the finale drops on December 31st. Many people call that New Year's Eve.
I think, okay, you know what? Yeah, many people do. Many people are saying.
Many people are saying it's New Year's Eve. It's the biggest New Year's Eve. It's the best New Year's Eve. But yeah, basically just putting it on a U.S. holiday for each of the 3 parts of Stranger Things, which doesn't feel like it's a production need to me.
That feels to me like...
That feels like a strategy.
Yes. Well, it also feels like the type of thing you would do if it were shovelware and the date it came out were more important than the quality of the product that was happening. That's rampant speculation on my part. I have no insider knowledge.
Oh, see, I was going, and you're not wrong. It could be that. I was going with we want the buzz at the holiday table to be like, ooh, is everybody excited for the next part of Stranger Things, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, it's like, to me, it feels like, oh, so familiar. Who likes comfort television? Notice we didn't say good. We said comfort.
Interesting. We also got a trailer, this one not comfort television, Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein, starring Oscar Isaac as the good doctor. That one's coming in November, and definitely treated like a major motion picture that would go to theaters. I'm sure it'll go to a couple theaters, but it is mostly just going to be watch it on Netflix.
I found this trailer, despite my best efforts to remain jaded, absolutely riveting. Right up until the point that I remembered you have to have a Frankenstein monster, and then I lost all interest. I really liked the visual pastiche of where they were going, and the idea of, tortured Promethean Frankenstein. I guess that's literally the point of the book. But I like the way they showed it in this trailer. Boy, am I over that monster.
Yeah, I mean, how you gonna make a Frankenstein movie without Frankenstein's
I don't have a
monster,
solution.
though?
I don't have a solution. It's that and the monomyth.
If anybody could do it, it'd be Guillermo del Toro, and it doesn't look like he was able to do that. So we also got Sony Music Vision announcing a bunch of music documentaries. There's going to be one about Blackpink's Lisa, directed by Sue Kim. Also, Baz Luhrmann doing one about Barbara Streisand. I'm sorry, Elvis Presley, Frank Marshall doing one about Barbra Streisand. And there's going to be one that follows Oasis on its reunion tour. So it'll be about Liam and Noel Gallagher. Sony making a big deal about like music documentaries. I think they're kind of a popular thing these days.
If we're playing the buying and selling game, Tom, I may be very, very, very heavy on buying documentaries and not the artist approved kind. I think we are about to enter a desert of authenticity during which the smallest thimbleful of a real human doing real things, especially if it's a genuine famous human, will be one of the biggest things we can get.
It's interesting. The Oasis and the Lisa one are both with the artist cooperation. They have to be because they're following them currently. Whereas the Streisand and the Elvis one, well, clearly you didn't get Elvis's permission, maybe the estates, but those are based on things that were in the past, right? So I wonder if there'll be a lot of tonal difference between those. And then finally, Netflix announced on Tuesday, not at Tadoom, but on Tuesday, the final season of Sandman, season 2, will have a 12th episode. Originally, they said it would be 11 episodes long. The 12th episode will be called Sandman Presents Death, the High Cost of Living. Will focus on the character death and won't arrive until July 31st. You probably don't remember unless you're a huge Sandman fan, but season 2 comes out in 2 phases. First part, July 3rd, second part, July 24th. And then you get one more episode on July 31st. Again, another 3-part release.
Oh, just taffy, Tom. Just month by month, we get farther and farther away from that filthy, filthy news item. Oh, just a little bit longer. Let this franchise be worth something.
Please, we have a new episode, special episode. We also have something called, man, I keep double clicking this one. I don't mean to. Buried Treasure.
That's not what we...
Most people want to know why they suddenly got rich.
Buried treasure.
Buried Treasure is the segment of the show where we talk about things we've been watching so that maybe if you aren't watching them, you can add them to your watch list. Brian, what you got?
Murderbot got good now because I understand enough of what they're doing that I could appreciate how tight the writing is on it. It is hard to develop much of anything in just 22 minutes per episode, Tom.
Yeah.
And to only release one of those per week. Now, having said that, this most recent episode, it did a thing where at the time you spent 40 whole seconds watching a glitched out version of a space opera's theme song, and you're like, well, that was an awful long time and an awful lot of production for a weird distorted note. And then, sure enough, it distracted me just long enough that it paid off with him bursting into song as a distraction technique later. And then and you realize, oh, that's all I'm going to get of that flavor this episode. Like, you know what it is? It's Taco Bell. The Onion once had a headline that says Taco Bell announces brand new way to combine the same 4 ingredients.
Yep.
Once you know that they're doing Taco Bell, you're like, well, how are you gonna toast it? Oh, you're gonna melt
Look
it
at
and
that.
then toast it.
Gordita. What is that? Yeah.
Exactly, right? And now that I know what's happening, I'm loving it even more. I'm back to loving it.
Yeah, I am also loving it more than I was, and I didn't dislike it at all. But the first 2 episodes, I'm like, okay, different tone than I would have expected. 3rd episode, I'm like, this is more what I expected. 4th episode, I'm like, okay, we're in the shoot now. Like I'm feeling it. We're getting to the parts I love. And so as a book reader, I feel like maybe I was harder on the first 2 episodes because I'm like, yeah, I know all the setup. Get me to the good part, and we are quickly getting to the good part. Also, I see you noted Rick and Morty is back.
Yeah, just because I finally, we sort of stumbled across the fact that it's back, but I dove in specifically because I saw a headline or two pointing out that, I don't know if it's still true as the time that we record this, but it had 100% critics response on Rotten Tomatoes, which you trust that less and less over time. But it's
I don't trust
nothing.
it at all anymore. But
once they stop paying for your health insurance, it's all bets are off.
Exactly. 0% on that move.
But speaking of The Matrix, I did watch that first episode that was all about The Matrix.
Yeah. It seems like I actually got partway through the 2nd episode that came out this week and got interrupted. And I'll be honest, I forgot I got interrupted until just now.
You know
I'm
what's
like,
funny
oh.
is I think I turned it on and I fell asleep halfway through, which I was not going to mention and
They're not
complain
bad.
about.
I want
now.
to follow that up by saying they're not bad episodes. They're just like, oh yeah, this is Rick and Morty, right?
Yeah.
It's not new, like, oh my God, I've never seen this before in my life kind of thing. But they're kind of focusing on an individual character so far in these first 2 episodes, which is kind of cool. Also, I just want to mention that Ncuti Gatwa announced that he is no longer going to play the Doctor, that he has finished his run as the Doctor. And so at the end of the last episode of this season of Doctor Who, as usually happens when a Doctor is leaving, he regenerated. Now, I will pause for anybody who hasn't watched it or has escaped seeing the headlines that spoil it, how it ends. Brian, would you like to know who he regenerates into?
Oh, I didn't even know it would be somebody famous. Or no, you're probably not going to say. I give up. Who? Yes, I do. Is it a kid? It's going to be a kid.
Rose Tyler. Billy Piper shows up in the end of the regeneration, who was the companion of Christopher Eccleston and David Tennant in the first 3 seasons.
Oh, that has wonderfully fascinating implications, doesn't it? What a genuine treat of a surprise. Wow.
I loved this final episode. I liked Doctor Who this year. I watched every episode. I enjoyed them. I loved this last episode.
So wait,
this last episode had the things I love about Doctor Who in it, including that ending where I'm like, what the is that?
That means they get to bring back all the doctors constantly.
The other thing they do in this final episode is the previous Doctor shows up and pops in, and she's like, hey, remember me? And so you're thinking, oh, they had Ncuti regenerate into David Tennant before, right? And it was like, oh, it's an old face. Oh, are they going to do that? Are they going to bring her back? Nope. They did that specifically as misdirection. I think.
Jodie Whittaker, is that what you meant?
Yeah, Jodie Whittaker shows up, and you're like, oh, maybe he's going to regenerate into her. But no, he does not. Also, in the credits, it says, Ncuti Gatwa as the Doctor, Jodie Whittaker as the Doctor, and introducing Billy Piper. So they didn't confirm that she's the Doctor, and they're playing it very coy in the interviews to be like, what I am, who I am, you'll just have to wait and see. We're not saying.
Yeah.
So that was pretty fun. Also, I did have a little bit of time over the weekend to get back into Hacks. So good. Really, really good season.
How far are you all the way caught up on this season?
No, I am 2 episodes away from the end.
Okay. Well, can you hint? Did they finally reveal a thing for them to team up against?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Really, everything up until that point just felt draggy.
I think that's probably why I fell off. And then I got to that point that you were talking about, but I was like, okay, I guess I need to see how they team up. And then now over the weekend, I watched all the team up stuff, including the meeting where their agent doesn't realize they've teamed up.
Oh, interesting. I think you're ahead of me then. So I'll catch up. Yeah, that'd be great. No,
it's really starting to roll. And there's some, did you see that Jimmy Kimmel makes an appearance?
No, but that makes sense.
Yeah. And playing himself, of course, as part of, the late night battles, which was pretty good.
Did you did watch all of The Studio, right?
I did. Yeah.
Yeah. How funny that you got characters playing themselves on Hacks, and then you have the entire cast of Hacks playing themselves on The Studio. And then you've got, and then you've got Ted Sarandos playing himself.
Oh yeah. Carol Burnett makes an appearance as herself in Hacks this season.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. No, there's some really, really cool stuff that they do.
That sounds fun.
Yeah. And by the way, Max has approved a 5th season of Hacks. So this will not be the last season of Hacks. I don't think anybody thought it would, but it won't be. If you got something we should be on the lookout for, email us cordkillers@gmail.com. Brian, we're almost out of slots for that workshop.
Yeah, dude. You know what? We're almost out of material. Like, if you've enjoyed the last few episodes, we couldn't help but let some of the workshop content bleed into the main show. But if you've been having a good time with our Galaxy Brain conversations, imagine Fantasy Baseball Camp, only it's Fantasy Cordkillers Camp. You come out to Austin, Texas, and we got 2 slots left on this. But go to bestnewsever.com. And what's going to happen is you're going to come out on Friday. We're all going to meet and mingle. And then Saturday, we're going to have some workshops. We're going to talk about the fundamentals of what we're going to dissect our own story of success as an independent podcast. You don't have to want to do a podcast, but you got some project that you'd like to have be more successful. We've noticed a few things tend to happen when somebody goes independent and grows their weird thing, whatever it is. You don't even have to know what your weird thing is, because I haven't told you, Tom, but I've been handing out homework assignments to everybody who I should loop you in on the emails. But
I know I've been getting the emails. I saw the emails from Annalisa.
Oh, good.
Yeah. And I even talked to Andy and he's like, yeah, I got my homework assignment. So
yeah. Well, and it's funny because people will put it's fun. It's really, really fun. And I think you're going to really, really dig it. We got 2 slots left. After that, it's going to be logistics. I'm not going to close the door. I guess by the time this goes out, the slots may be gone. If scheduling works out for you, just reach out directly. We might be able to fit 1 more person in, but we really are like at max for logistics. But
don't let it stop you from investigating. Go check it out, because maybe that slot isn't going.
Well, and also between you, me, and the wall, Tom, the fact that we're about to sell out, you know what happens when a show sells out? Usually they have another show. Yep. I'm just saying.
So you might want to be first in line for that, if that's the case. Yeah, go check it out. Again, bestnewsever.com. Let's start by scanning the horizon.
Send a scanning to abort.
Scanning the horizon!
So if you listened last week, I made a big deal about how Lionsgate was not part of Starz. Starz was separate from Lionsgate. And here's how Lionsgate did without Starz. Well, Starz gave its report on its own, ended the quarter with 12.3 million streaming subscribers in the U.S. That's up 530,000 from the previous quarter. Total U.S. subscribers, including linear TV, came in at 18 million, up 320,000. So you still got close to 6 million subscribers of Starz, getting it the old fashioned way, and 18 million subscribers ain't bad.
So remember when we would talk about Nielsen numbers, and I think at some point I might have even said out loud, like, why do we need Nielsen numbers? Everyone can self-report. There's one thing Nielsen numbers can reveal that nobody else has any incentive to reveal, which is how many of these subscribers are all just the same people? What is the overlap? Like, is there 50 million people who like to subscribe to things and they subscribe to everything, and 250 million people who in general don't like? I'm interested in the intersectionality of streaming subscriptions.
Yeah, and Starz is a very niche situation, right? They have their movies, but they're pretty much known for their originals. But the originals are not the buzzy ones like you hear from HBO and Netflix and Disney Plus.
Well, you're creeping in on my thought process, which is, are the people subscribing to Starz, are they just compulsive collectors? Are these the same people with thousands
I need to have
of DVDs?
Starz. I want everything.
Exactly.
Yeah. No. Or are they all Outlander fans? Or this the entire number of Outlander fans?
Are you or someone you know subscribed to Starz? Please tell us why at cordkillers@gmail.com.
Disney Plus and Hulu updated its Perks program. Perks gives you freebies. And so the new freebies include things like a free 6 months DoorDash membership that takes away the fees of DoorDash delivery, discounted stays at Disney World, 20% off Adidas shoes for some reason, because they struck a deal with Adidas. You'll even get a shot at winning items from Hulu shows now. So you could get, like, one of the examples is a Handmaid's Tale robe and wings. I don't know where you'd wear that, maybe to a protest, but you got a shot at it.
I can't even fault, like, the weirder the pair up, like, Ever since somebody started taking the dumbest sounding recipes from LLMs and then making them, and they're like, guys, this is kind of delicious. I've stopped doubting weird pair-ups. Like if a model says, statistically speaking, you want hot wings and robes to go together or whatever, then why not give it a try?
Ars Technica's Sharon Harding wrote a deep dive that I want to point everybody out about. I talked about it on DTNS a little bit. She dug into why Apple TV is praised as the most privacy protecting of all of the streaming devices, and basically breaks it down and finds out like, yeah, there's a couple of very minor things you might want to question. But for the most part, if you want to make sure that you can keep your information to yourself and not have it given to a third party about what you watch, use an Apple TV, because they are the hands down best at it. Very much so, compared to smart TVs being the worst at like, yeah, they're just going to gobble up as much as possible because they're subsidizing the purchase of your television by doing so. Or Google, which is an advertising company. So that's what they're doing on Android. Amazon with Fire OS is a retail, but also advertising company. So that's what they're doing. And Apple, just because they don't have the same profit motive, avoids almost all of those. Couple of minor things with Siri, a couple of minor things with first party data sharing on some of your viewing habits, but most of that is related to Apple TV app, which, you know, they're just recommending things in the Apple TV app if you let it have the data. And so they make it a little harder for you to do that because the app doesn't work if you don't do it.
Do you think we're better off with essentially the privacy tax being kind of behind the fig leaf, or would you rather have it be known? Where I don't know. I guess we like it behind the fig leaf.
I think I want it up front. Like, I don't mind getting a cheaper price on my television in exchange for knowing, like, okay, you're going to look at my viewing. That's good to know. I'm glad I know that. I want control over my data and I want choice. And so I like Apple TV less because of the privacy stuff and more just because it's got a smooth interface and it seems to be the easiest one to use. But it's nice to know that I have this kind of control. That's important to me too.
Yeah.
Marvel is not going to present at Hall H this year at San Diego Comic-Con. If you haven't been to Comic-Con or if you haven't watched Comic-Con streams, Hall H is the big hall. That's where the major stuff happens. And because they pushed Avengers to December 2026, they can wait and do it in summer 2026. So that's what they're going to do it. They'll still have smaller panels. They'll still have a booth, but no big Hall H announcement from Marvel this year.
Yeah. Who wants to tread water in front of thousands of rabid fanfolk? Nobody.
And then finally, still riding high on the success of Barbie, Mattel announced it's combining its film and TV units to form Mattel Studios. They've always had an office to help with the licensing and encourage and work with directors, but it seems like they're trying to build it up a little more. If you don't know, Mattel has a plan to release Masters of the Universe live action film inspired by He-Man action figures. That's coming in June of next year. And Matchbox, based on its miniature cars, slated for a fall 2026 theatrical release. I tried to make a Kool-Aid Man joke here, but it's not Mattel.
Well, you know what's funny is the Kool-Aid thread in the studio is sort of indicative of 10 years ago, let's say, or 10, 15 years ago, when Battleship came out. It was exactly what you would expect. Name that's well known, make just what we would now, to our eyes, look like AI slop and slap the word Battleship on it and sell popcorn. But now we've seen so many examples of niche brands and properties that aren't big at all, that aren't a cash-in. They're just big enough to have a foothold in your brain. And it turns out that after that, having excellent storytellers who tell a nuanced story that, give or take fits within the framework, remarkable things can happen. So my gut wants to say, all right, Mattel, outside of Masters of the Universe and Matchbox, what else you got? And the answer is, as long as it's a foothold, that's all they need. After that, they just start pouring good story into it.
I think they need to know what the story of the brand is. I think one of the reasons Barbie worked is that Barbie had a story to tell. It was the hopes and dreams of young women. And so you could argue and many people do, whether those hopes and dreams were good or a bad thing that Barbie was encouraging. And that's what they did, is like, let's take hopes and dreams of Barbie and write a story about that and include that part of it, that aspect of it. And that's what made it magic. I can see where you could do that with Masters of the Universe, hopes and dreams of little boys, right? What do they want to be? What are they aspiring to be? And you could do a similar thing with He-Man there. I'm a little curious where you go with Matchbox on that. I'm not saying it's impossible.
I mean, to be honest, a slightly more self-aware version of the Fast and Furious franchise.
Maybe, yeah.
If you added, like, there are some moves that you couldn't get away with in Fast and Furious but if you did enough of showing mastery of that domain and then instantly added a more thoughtful layer in a clever way on top of it, I think that could be really great.
The challenge there is Barbie has a rich cultural history to draw on to make your story. He-Man, less so than Barbie, but pretty rich cultural history that you can draw on. Part of the cultural zeitgeist, even as a controversy. This was just made to sell toys. I don't know that Matchbox has that rich of a cultural history, but maybe I'm just missing it.
Because it's a reflection of the history of the American automobile, and there's a lot there. Yeah,
I mean, in other words, like, what differentiates Matchbox? That's what you've got to find out. That's what you got to do.
Yeah,
and I think maybe where I'm going with this, as a boy who collected Matchbox cars as a kid, Hot Wheels was always the one everybody talked about. I feel like Hot Wheels has the brand recognition that Matchbox wished it had. Maybe that's your story.
But I don't know what. Okay, so let me throw this your way. I was going to HEB and I was gonna pick up some soda, and there was Coke Zero, and then there was Pepsi Zero, and I walked out of there with RC Cola Zero, simply because they embraced their niche, we're third place 1970s looking aesthetic. So it could be that they lean into being the forgotten other one, the kid brother of Star Wars, of Hot Wheels.
Yeah. Maybe. Anyway, I'm not saying there's plenty of ways they could go. I'm just curious where they go with that one. Very cool. Let's move on to Lachetta.
You've got mail.
Amr has a really good point. Hey man, did anyone notice that venue sports would have been cheaper than getting ESPN, Fox One, and Max at a higher cost than the $43 a month price of venue sports? ESPN, Fox One are very likely to do sports on cable what Netflix and Hulu did to scripted television. And once sports goes a la carte and people stop watching the news on cable, what do you think the long-term use case for cable is going to be? We kind of talk about the long-term use case for cable all the time. It's the bundling. It's I still get one bill, because they're adding streaming to cable all the time. But it does seem like, I think it's a really good point that keeping venue sports from happening definitely raised the price of you getting those sports. Terry writes, sorry to send this right under the wire, but my listening time has taken a hit recently by the Dungeon Crawler Carl series, which one of you guys recommended. I can't stop listening, so I'm late in submitting this, but it's been percolating for a while. And then he recommended Hogan's Heroes for the full experience. Signed, God damn it, Donut, Terry.
I think Hogan's Heroes would be a fascinating revisit, because the shadow of the Third Reich has lengthened and shortened in just the last in our lifetime. And we were kids, and part of the reason that Hogan's Heroes existed was as a sign of disrespect to the defeated, awful Third Reich, right? And then it's like, well, then space Nazis came along in the form of Star Wars, and then the shadow got longer, and then now it's politically charged in the moment. I could be on board for Hogan's Heroes.
Yeah, no, the premise of Hogan's Heroes really was Nazis, how bumbling and incompetent they were. And they fooled a bunch of otherwise meaning well people into helping them. Schultz being that character. But the smart allies could never have been defeated by them. And I'm wondering how that plays today when Nazis, like you said, is very politically charged. Different Overton window, as they say. Different Brian than you wrote in, unless this wasn't you, right?
No.
Okay. Different Brian than you wrote, hi, Brian, Tom, and Amos. I was listening to your discussion on weekly episodes versus batch releases. I thought you would refer back to this conversation when you discussed YouTube, and his point being everything I watch on YouTube is a weekly release. They release on a defined schedule. They don't release in batches. You don't release binge watching on YouTube. Cordkillers is an example of this. We release every week.
Yeah, and if not every week, you get a sense of about how often something comes out. We try to stick to weekly-ish on Modern Rogue and so on. Yeah. Reed Lennox writes, hey, everybody. Been listening to the show forever, and I love the full experience. However, full is a backronym, and I think you're missing something by not watching in release order. Sometimes, like with Andor, it works, and because you have already seen all the episodes, it fits together. I think on other shows, so much swing doesn't really work. And then he proposes changing the acronym when we need to keep things in release order to first, ugliest, loveliest, last. Because first and last will always be first and last. I was originally on Reed's side where I'm like, well, it's the full experience. We don't need to change the name. But when the ultimate and lowest are swapped in order, we should just watch them in release order. And Brian convinced me otherwise. Yeah. And in order to follow this thread, we would have to on purpose decide that we would rather not have had our Shield watching experience the way we did. And also, I don't know, the pilot is the audition for our attention. The second thing you do is in a stage show, that's where you need to work the hardest to win the audience over to take the full ride. That's when you want your heavy hitter. That's when you want the ultimate, no matter what. And so I'm still not swayed.
Yeah. But if you would like to support Reed or weigh in on Brian's side, please send us cordkillers@gmail.com. Finally, Dan says, I've been using Sidereel for a number of years to keep track of what shows I'm watching and need to watch and which episodes I have watched, but they removed their app years ago and the site is chock full of ads. Dan, I'm so sorry you're still using Sidereel. I think Tom said he uses something else now. What was it? I've been meaning to set up something new for a while, and I know Tom talked about it months ago, but I'm not finding it easily now. Dan, go to Tracked TV, Trakt. It is an open source database for tracking. And the beauty of Tracked TV is that you can pick the same app I use or not. You can find another app, but in all of these apps, you log into Tracked. And if you want to change apps, which I have done, you don't lose your history. You just go to the new app, log in with Tracked, and then you get your database. I currently use an app called TVST, which is an acronym for something I can't remember right now. But if you look it up, it logs into Tracked, and Tracked actually has its own default app, which is okay. I just like the interface a little better with TVST. So either TVST or Tracked, Trakt, but you definitely want to use Tracked to do the tracking, because that way you don't lose your watch list.
Alternately, you could roll your own at home. I don't know if I've mentioned this, Tom, but for the last 13 years, I've actually maintained a database of everything that I've watched. It's in a Google spreadsheet, and it helps if you have a show called Cordkillers every week that you do with your friend Tom Merritt, and then you just sort of jot down whatever you're watching so you can access that later. Also, once a year, do a review, maybe dress it up as an awards show, just a way to keep it
so those
fresh
are your
in your
two
mind.
options right there. Yeah. But thank you, Dan. And if you need more questions about this, don't hesitate to email us back. That is it it for this show right here. Big thanks to everybody who supports us at patreon.com/cordkillers. Our website is cordkillers.com. Our email address is cordkillers@gmail.com. We are live on twitch.tv/Night Attack Tuesdays at 5:30 p.m. Eastern, 2:30 p.m. Pacific. I reckon we'll talk to you next time.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.